The blue and white moon of Kepler 442b hung in space like a jewel. From orbit, Captain Jake Morrison could see the lights of 12 major cities spread across its surface. Each light represented thousands of lives, families, children, workers, and dreamers who had built their homes on this distant world. 12 million people called this moon their home. Now they were about to die. The swarm had broken through the Coalition's main battle line 2 hours ago. Most of the alien fleet was in full retreat, racing toward the inner system with whatever ships they had left. Commander Zekthara had pulled his remaining forces back to the edge of the star system, claiming he needed to regroup for another attack. But Morrison knew the truth. The Coalition was beaten. They had lost too many ships and too many crews. The aliens who had called humans useless were now running for their lives. The evacuation of KEPLER 442b had been going on for 6 hours. Massive transport ships moved back and forth between the moon's surface and the orbital stations. But there were too many people and not enough ships. At the current rate, it would take 3 days to evacuate everyone. The swarm would be here. In 6 hours, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez looked up from her communication station on the bridge of the UNS Liberty. Her face was pale and worried. "Captain, we're getting reports from the surface. The evacuation is only 12% complete. There are still over 10 million people down there." Morrison stared at the display screen showing the approaching swarm fleet. Over 300 bioships moved toward the moon like a tide of death. Their organic hulls pulsed with sick light, and their formation had grown more organized as they learned from each battle. "What about the Coalition fleet?" Morrison asked. "Long-range sensors showed them at the system's edge," Rodriguez replied. "They're not coming back." Chief Engineer Pete Walsh joined Morrison on the bridge. The older man's face was grim. "Captain, I've been running the numbers. Even if we use every transport ship in the system, we can't evacuate more than half the population before the swarm arrives." Morrison felt the weight of 12 million lives pressing down on him. The human fleet consisted of only 12 ships. 12 small, outdated vessels against over 300 bioships that had just destroyed the most advanced military force. In the galaxy. The mathematics were simple and brutal. They couldn't win this fight. They couldn't even survive it. But they also couldn't abandon 12 million innocent people. Morrison activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We have a situation." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The Coalition fleet has withdrawn. The evacuation is incomplete. In 6 hours, the swarm will reach this moon." He could feel the tension on the bridge. As his crew realized what he was saying, they were alone against impossible odds. "We have 2 choices," Morrison continued. "We can withdraw with the Coalition and save ourselves. Or we can stay and buy more time for the evacuation. I won't lie to you. If we stay, we probably won't survive. But we might save a few million lives." Morrison turned to look at his bridge. Crew. These were people he had served with for years. Rodriguez had joined the fleet straight out of the academy. Walsh had been fixing ships since before Morrison was born. They were good people who deserved better than this. "I'm not ordering anyone to stay," Morrison said. "This is a volunteer mission. Anyone who wants to leave with the Coalition fleet can transfer now. I won't think less of anyone who chooses to live." The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Then Rodriguez spoke up. "With respect, Captain, shut up. We're staying." Walsh nodded. "Someone has to keep those civilians alive. Might as well be us." Morrison felt a surge of pride in his crew. He activated the fleet communication channel. "Liberty to all human ships. You heard the situation. We need volunteers to stay and cover the evacuation. Anyone who wants to withdraw should signal now." 1. By 1, the responses came back. Captain Ryan Hughes of the UNS Defender was first. "Defender staying put, Liberty. Let's show these aliens how humans fight." Captain Kate Sullivan of the UNS Defiance was next. "Defiance isn't going anywhere. We've got work to do." All 12 ships volunteered to stay. Morrison wasn't surprised. The human fleet had always been made up of people who joined because they believed in something bigger than themselves. "All right then," Morrison said. "Let's get to work." The human fleet positioned itself between the approaching swarm and the moon. 12 ships against over 300. The odds were so bad, they were almost funny. Dr. Lisa Carter had been working with the other ship commanders to develop new tactics. The humans had learned that their unpredictable fighting style could confuse the swarm, but they had never tried to hold a fixed position before. "The key is to keep them guessing," Carter explained over the communication channel. "We can't fight them the same way twice. Every attack has to be different." Morrison studied the tactical display. The swarm bioships were still 2 hours away, but they were moving fast. The human ships had that long to prepare their defenses. "Sullivan, take your ship and start building a debris field," Morrison ordered. "Use everything you can find. Asteroids, wrecked ships, garbage from the orbital stations. I want a maze out there." Captain Sullivan's ship, the Honest Defiance, began pushing large chunks of metal and rock into position. The debris field wouldn't stop the bioships, but it would force them to move slowly and carefully. "Hughes, I want you to rig some surprises in that debris field," Morrison continued. "Mines, explosives, anything that goes boom." The Honest Defender moved through the debris field, hiding chemical explosives inside chunks of metal. When the bioships tried to clear the obstacles, they would get a nasty surprise. The other human ships spread out in a loose formation. They couldn't stop the entire swarm fleet, but they could make them pay for every mile they advance. Morrison thought about the coalition fleet safely retreating to the inner system. Part of him didn't blame them. They had superior technology and trained crews. It made sense for them to preserve their forces for a more winnable battle. But Morrison had been born on a colony world not unlike this moon. He remembered what it felt like to be a child looking up at the stars, wondering if anyone out there cared about him and his family. Today he was going to make sure the answer was yes. The swarm arrived exactly on schedule. Their bioships came out of hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects. They moved toward the moon in a tight formation, confident in their superior numbers. The first bioships hit Sullivan's debris field and slowed down. They began carefully picking their way through the obstacles, using their organic sensors to scan for threats. That's when Hughes triggered his first surprise. A chunk of metal that looked like harmless debris suddenly exploded, taking 3 bioships with it. The explosion sent more debris flying through space, creating even more obstacles. The swarm paused, confused by the unexpected attack. They began scanning the debris field more carefully, looking for more hidden explosives. While they were distracted, Morrison led the first human attack. The Un's Liberty dove down from above the debris field, firing kinetic rounds at the bioships exposed. Flanks! The metal bullets punched through organic armor that had been designed to stop energy weapons before the bioships could adapt to the kinetic attack. Captain Ben Miller of the UNS Ranger attacked from a different angle. He used his ship's industrial welding lasers to cut through bioship hulls. The concentrated heat burned through their organic armor like it was paper. The swarm tried to respond, but the human ships scattered before they could coordinate their return fire. Each human vessel moved independently, following no set pattern or formation. Captain Sandra Kim of the Honest Warrior tried something completely insane. She flew her ship directly into the middle of the swarm formation and released a cloud of industrial lubricant. The slippery substance coated the bioship sensors, blinding them temporarily. While the bioships struggled to clear their sensors, Captain Tony Garcia of the UN's Frontier attacked with modified construction equipment. He used a massive plasma cutter designed for breaking apart asteroids to slice a bioship in half. For 30 minutes, the human fleet held the line. Their chaotic tactics kept the swarm confused and off balance. Bioships exploded and burned as the humans threw everything they had at the enemy, but there were just too many of them. For every bioship the humans destroyed, 10 more took its place. Slowly, inevitably, the swarm began to push through the human defenses. The Un's frontier was the first human ship to die. Captain Garcia had pushed his luck too far, and a group of bioships surrounded his vessel. Their organic weapons ate through his hull in minutes. The Un's warrior followed 20 minutes later. Captain Kim's ship was caught in a crossfire and torn apart by multiple bioship attacks. Morrison watched his fleet shrink as the battle continued. They had started with 12 ships. Now they were down to 8, but they had bought precious time for the evacuation. Every minute they held the line meant more civilians could escape. "Liberty to all ships," Morrison broadcast. "We've held them for 2 hours. The evacuation transports are reporting 40% complete. Keep fighting." The remaining human ships continued their desperate defense. They used every trick they could think of, from ramming attacks to chemical weapons to simply throwing pieces of their own ships at the enemy. The small briefing room aboard the UNS Liberty was cramped and simple compared to the grand command centers of the coalition ships. A single table sat in the middle, surrounded by worn chairs that had seen better days. The walls were bare metal, painted white, with a few small display screens showing basic ship information. Captain Jake Morrison sat at the head of the table, his hands folded in front of him. Around him, his senior officers studied the data they had collected during the battle. The fighting was still going on outside, but the human ships had pulled back to a safe distance to think about what they had learned. Chief Engineer Pete Walsh spread papers across the table. In an age of holographic displays and quantum computers, the humans still used simple printouts and handwritten notes. It was old-fashioned, but it worked. "The bioships are definitely learning," Walsh said, tapping one of the papers with his finger. "Every time the coalition destroys one of them, the others get stronger, but there's a pattern to how they do it." Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez leaned forward to look at the data. "What kind of pattern?" Walsh pulled out a timeline he had drawn by hand. Each bioship needs exactly 47 minutes to fully adapt to a new weapon. During that time, they're vulnerable to that weapon. After 47 minutes, they're completely immune. Morrison studied the timeline. "So if we keep changing our weapons every 45 minutes, we can stay ahead of them." "Maybe," Walsh said. "But the coalition ships only have a few different types of weapons. They run out of options pretty quickly." Dr. Lisa Carter, the fleet scientist who studied alien life forms, had been quiet until now. She was a small woman with short brown hair and intelligent eyes. She had joined the human fleet because she wanted to learn about alien species, but she had never expected to study something like the swarm. "The bioships aren't just learning about weapons," she said. "They're learning about tactics too. Watch how they move now compared to when they first arrived." She pointed to a video screen showing the current battle. The swarm ships no longer moved in the flowing, organic patterns they had used earlier. Now they moved in tight formations, copying the military tactics of the coalition forces. "They're becoming more like the coalition ships," Carter continued. "More organized, more predictable. But that might be a weakness we can use." Morrison looked at her with interest. "How so?" Carter stood up and walked to the small whiteboard mounted on the wall. She picked up a marker and began drawing simple diagrams. "The coalition fights like a computer program," she explained. "Everything is logical and efficient. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. The swarm has learned to expect that kind of fighting." She drew 2 groups of circles representing fleets. "But humans don't fight like computers. We're messy. We do things that don't make logical sense. We take risks that no computer would ever take." Walsh nodded slowly. "The swarm has never fought humans before. They don't know how to adapt to our kind of chaos." Morrison leaned back in his chair, thinking hard. Outside, he could hear the distant sounds of the battle continuing. Coalition ships were still dying, and the swarm was still learning from every encounter. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Yes, Doc. Carter put down the marker and turned to face the group I'm suggesting we stop trying to be like the Coalition. We use our advantages instead of copying their disadvantages. Which are, we're unpredictable. We use old technology they've never seen. And we're willing to try things that other species would consider insane. Rodriguez smiled. You mean we fight dirty? Exactly, Carter said. The dirtier, the better. Morrison called up the ship's communication system. Liberty to all human vessels. All captains report to the Liberty for immediate tactical conference. Within an hour, the captains of all 12 human ships had gathered in the Liberty's briefing room. The space was even more crowded now, with officers sitting on the floor and leaning against the walls. But everyone was listening carefully. Morrison explained what his team had discovered about the swarm's learning pattern. Then he outlined their new strategy. We're going to stop fighting like the Coalition, he said. From now on, we use everything we have, but we never use the same tactic. Twice in a row. Captain Ryan Hughes of the Un's Defender raised his hand. What do you mean by everything? Walsh grinned. I mean everything. Kinetic weapons, chemical explosive, ramming attacks, debris fields, even using our own damaged ships as weapons. Anything that works. Captain Kate Sullivan of the Un's Defiance looked skeptical. That sounds like a good way to get ourselves killed. Maybe, Morrison admitted. But sitting here doing evacuation runs while the Coalition gets wiped out is also a good way to get killed. At least this way, we go down fighting. Dr. Carter spoke up. The key is unpredictability. The swarm learns by studying patterns. If we don't follow patterns, they can't adapt to us. The human captains spent the next 2 hours planning their attack. They divided their weapons and tactics into different categories. Each ship would use a different approach, and they would switch tactics every 30 minutes to stay ahead of the swarm's learning curve. It was a desperate plan, but it was better than doing nothing. As the meeting ended, Morrison received a communication from the Coalition fleet. Commander Zekthar's voice came through the speakers, but he sounded different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by desperation. All available ships, this is Coalition Command. We are in full retreat. The enemy has adapted to all our weapons. We cannot maintain our position. Morrison looked at his officers. Looks like we're up. The human fleet moved back toward the battle zone. The sight that greeted them was heartbreaking. The proud Coalition fleet that had started the day with over 200 ships was now down to less than 80. Debris fields marked the locations where alien vessels had died. The swarm bioships moved through the wreckage like predators, hunting down the remaining Coalition forces. They had grown larger during the battle, feeding on the destroyed ships, and becoming stronger. All human ships, this is Liberty, Morrison broadcast. Remember the plan. Hit them fast, hit them different, and don't give them time to adapt. The Un's Defender made the first attack. Captain Hughes used his ship's mining lasers to cut through a bioship's hull. The organic vessel exploded in a shower of green fluid and twisted metal. The other bioships immediately began scanning the debris, trying to understand what had happened. Before they could adapt, the Un's Defiance attacked a different group of bioships. Captain Sullivan used her ship's construction. Explosives designed for breaking apart asteroids. The chemical bombs ripped through the bioship's organic armor like it was paper. The swarm ships tried to adapt to the explosives, but then the UNS Liberty attacked using simple kinetic rounds. Metal bullets fired from chemical-powered guns punched through bioship hulls that had been designed to stop energy weapons. For the first time since the battle began, the swarm was confused. Their bioships started moving in erratic patterns, unsure of how to respond to enemies that kept changing their tactics. It's working, Rodriguez reported from her station. The bioships are having trouble adapting. They keep switching between different defensive configurations. Morrison watched the battle unfold on his display screen. The human ships were tiny compared to the bioships, but they were winning. Their unpredictable tactics were causing chaos in the swarm's ranks. The UNS Ranger, commanded by Captain Ben Miller, tried something completely insane. He flew his ship directly at a bioship and ejected his cargo bay full of industrial acid. The acid ate through the bioship's hull in seconds, causing it to collapse from the inside. The other bioships had no idea how to defend against an attack like that. They had adapted to energy weapons, kinetic weapons, and explosives. But they had never encountered a ship that used industrial chemicals as weapons. "Human fleet, this is Coalition Command." Zector's voice came through the communications. "What are you doing?" "Your tactics make no sense," Morrison smiled. "That's the point, Commander. We're not making sense, and it's working." The battle continued, but now the momentum was shifting. The swarm's perfect adaptation system was breaking down under the assault of human unpredictability. Every time they tried to learn from one attack, the humans switched to something completely different. Captain Sandra, Kim of the Un's Warrior, used her ship's atmospheric processors to create a cloud of superheated steam. The bioship's sensors couldn't track targets through the cloud, and they flew blind into Kim's missile attacks. The UNS Frontier, under Captain Tony Garcia, actually ran the bioship at full speed. The collision destroyed both ships, but the explosion took out 3 more bioships that were too close to the blast. "That's 12 bioships down," Rodriguez reported. "And they still haven't figured out how to counter our tactics." Morrison felt a surge of hope. Maybe they could actually win this battle. Maybe human ingenuity and chaos could defeat an enemy that had seemed invincible. But the real test was still coming. The swarm had hundreds of bioships, and the humans only had 12. Even if their tactics worked, they would need help from the Coalition to have any chance of victory. "Liberty to Coalition Command," Morrison broadcast. "We found a way to hurt them, but we need your help to finish this." The alarm sounds echoed through every ship in the Coalition fleet. Red lights flashed on control panels as sensors detected the approaching enemy. The Vortex swarm had arrived at the edge of the Kepler system, and they brought death with them. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Un's Liberty, watching the main display screen. The human ship was positioned far from the battle zone, as ordered. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They had been assigned to evacuate civilians from the outer colonies, while the real military forces fought the swarm. "Contact on long-range sensors," reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her position at the communication station. "The swarm. Ships are entering the system now." Morrison leaned forward in his captain's chair. The display showed dozens of red dots moving inward from the system's edge. Each dot represented a swarm bioship, and there were more appearing every minute. "How many?" Morrison asked. Rodriguez checked her readings. "At least 300 ships, sir. Maybe more. They're still coming through the jump point." The human captain felt a chill run down his spine. 300 ships was more than anyone had expected. The Coalition fleet had about 200 vessels, and they were supposed to be the largest military force ever assembled. On the communication channels, alien voices filled the airways. The Coalition commanders were coordinating their battle plans. Commander Zector's voice came through clearly on the main frequency. "All ships, this is Coalition Command. The enemy has arrived in greater numbers than projected. Maintain formation and prepare for engagement. Victory depends on discipline and superior technology." Morrison switched to a private channel that connected him to the other human ships. "Liberty to all human vessels. Stay in position and monitor the battle. We'll move in for evacuation runs as soon as the fighting starts." The 12 human ships hung in space like tiny metal specks compared to the massive alien warships. The Un's Liberty was the largest of the human vessels, but it was still smaller than most Coalition frigates. The aliens had been right about one thing: human technology was far behind theirs. But Pete Walsh, the chief engineer, had been studying the technical data about the swarm. He joined Morrison on the bridge as the enemy ships came into visual. "Range. Captain, look at those bioships," Walsh said, pointing at the display. "They're not built like normal spacecraft. They're grown, not constructed." Morrison studied the enemy vessels. They looked like huge insects or sea creatures floating through space. Their surfaces pulsed with organic light, and they moved in flowing patterns rather than straight lines. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The Coalition thinks they can fight them like normal ships, Walsh continued. But living things don't follow the same rules as machines. The first Coalition ships moved forward to engage the enemy. The Zentari led the attack with their sleek silver vessels. Energy beams lanced out from their weapons, striking the lead. Swarm bioships. Explosions bloomed in the darkness of space as the alien weapons found their targets. For a moment, it looked like the battle would be easy. The swarm ships seemed to have no answer for the Coalition's advanced energy weapons. Bioships burst apart under the assault. Their organic matter scattering into space. Commander Zekdar's voice crackled over the communications. Excellent work, Zentari fleet. Continue the attack. The enemy is weaker than expected. But Rodriguez was monitoring all the communication channels, and she heard something that made her frown. Captain, I'm picking up strange signals from the swarm ships. They're transmitting data to each other. Morrison turned to look at her. What kind of data? I'm not sure. But it's happening every time one of their ships gets destroyed. Like they're sending information back to the others. The battle continued for another hour. The Coalition forces pressed their advantage, destroying dozens of swarm bioships. The alien commanders began to sound confident. Their superior technology was winning. Just as they had predicted, then everything changed. The first sign of trouble came when a group of Zentari ships fired their energy weapons at a cluster of bioships. The beams struck the organic hulls, but nothing happened. The weapons that had been so effective earlier now seemed to bounce off harmlessly. Zentari command. To Coalition fleet came an urgent voice. Our weapons are not penetrating enemy armor. Repeat, energy weapons are ineffective. Commander Zekdar's response was sharp and worried. Impossible. Check your targeting systems. But the Zentari weren't having targeting problems. The swarm bioships had adapted to their weapons. Whatever the destroyed ships had transmitted to their fellows had taught them how to defend against energy beams. The Coalition commanders quickly switched to different weapons. The Corvettes used their plasma cannons. The Melody fired quantum torpedoes. Each new weapon worked for a few minutes, destroying several bioships. But then the same thing happened. The swarm adapted, and the weapons became useless. From his position, far from the battle, Morrison watched the Coalition's advantage disappear. The alien ships that had seemed so powerful were now struggling to damage the enemy. Their advanced technology was failing them. They're learning, Walsh said quietly. Every time the Coalition destroys one of their ships, the others learn how to defend against that weapon. The battle began to turn. The swarm bioships, now immune to most Coalition weapons, pressed their attack. They moved in strange patterns, flowing around the alien formations like water around rocks. Their own weapons were different from anything the Coalition had seen before. Instead of energy beams or missiles, the bioships fired clouds of something that looked like living metal. When these clouds touched Coalition ships, they began to eat through the hulls. The advanced armor that protected the alien vessels crumbled under the organic assault. The first Coalition ship to die was a Zentari cruiser. The bioweapons ate through its hull in minutes, and the ship broke apart in a shower of sparks and atmosphere. The crew barely had time to send a distress signal before they were gone. Coalition command to all ships. Zekdar's voice was no longer confident. The enemy has adapted to our weapons. All ships, try kinetic weapons. Use physical projectiles. But most Coalition ships didn't carry kinetic weapons. They had relied on energy-based systems for so long that they had forgotten about simpler options. The few ships that did have physical weapons found that they worked, but only briefly. The swarm learned to defend against those too. Rodriguez looked up from her station. Captain, I'm getting evacuation requests from the outer colonies. The civilians are panicking. Morrison nodded. This was what they had been assigned to do. Signal the other human ships. We're moving in to begin evacuation runs. The human fleet moved deeper into the system, toward the civilian colonies. They passed through the edge of the battle zone, where coalition ships were now fighting desperately against an enemy that seemed to counter every strategy. As they flew past a damaged Corvex battleship, Morrison saw the mechanical aliens trying to repair their weapons. Their advanced technology was failing them, and they didn't know what to do about it. "Liberty the human fleet," Morrison broadcast. "Stay alert. We're entering the combat zone." The 12 human ships were tiny compared to the massive coalition vessels around them. But they had one advantage that none of the aliens possessed. Their weapons were old and simple. Chemical rockets, metal bullets, and explosive charges. The kind of primitive technology that the swarm had never encountered before. A group of bioships noticed the human vessels and moved to intercept them. Morrison watched them approach on his display screen. They were beautiful in their own way, but deadly. "All stop," Morrison ordered. "Let them come to us." The bioships closed in, their organic weapons preparing the fire. But Walsh was studying his instruments, and what he saw made him smile. "Captain, they're scanning us, but they don't know what to make of our ships. Their sensors are designed to identify energy weapons and advanced technology. They can't figure out what we are." The lead bioship fired its weapon cloud at the UNS Liberty. The living metal struck the human ship's hull, but something unexpected happened. Instead of eating through the armor, the bioweapon seemed confused. The Liberty's hull was made of simple steel and ceramic, not the advanced materials used in coalition ships. "They adapted to fight advanced technology," Walsh said with growing excitement. "But they don't know how to handle primitive materials." Morrison felt a smile cross his face. "Rodriguez, signal the other human ships. Tell them we might have found something interesting." The battle continued around them, but the human ships had discovered something that might change everything. The swarm's greatest strength was also their weakness. They could adapt to any advanced technology, but they had no defense against weapons and materials they had never seen before. As the coalition fleet continued to retreat, losing ship after ship to an enemy that learned from every encounter, the humans began to realize that their primitive technology might not be a disadvantage after all. It might be exactly what was needed to defeat an enemy that could adapt to anything modern. But first, they had to survive long enough to test their theory, and with 300 bioships in the system, survival was far from guaranteed. The massive space station orbited the blue-green planet below like a metal moon. Inside the main command center, hundreds of alien beings moved with urgent purpose. Their faces showed worry and fear. The emergency council meeting had been called for a reason that made everyone nervous. Commander Zekthara stood at the center of the room. His tall, thin body looked like a giant insect walking on 2 legs. His large black eyes scanned the room, while his mouth parts clicked together. The sound meant he was thinking hard about something. As the leader of the Galactic Defense Coalition, he had seen many battles. But this enemy was different. This enemy was dangerous. The holographic display in front of him showed a map of space. Red dots marked the locations where entire star systems had vanished. 3 systems in just 2 months. Billions of lives lost. The vortex swarm was moving toward the inner worlds, and nothing seemed able to stop them. "The reports are clear," Zekthara said to the council. His voice came through the translation devices as cold and sharp. "The swarm has consumed the outer rim colonies. They are moving toward the core worlds faster than we expected." An alien with blue skin and 4 arms raised one hand. "What about the defense fleets we sent? The ships with our best weapons?" Zekthara. Mandibles clicked louder. "Gone. All of them. The swarm learns from every battle. Our quantum weapons worked for exactly 1 engagement. Then they became useless." The room filled with worried voices speaking in dozens of different languages. Some aliens made sounds like singing. Others spoke in clicks and whistles. The translation devices work hard to keep up with all the different conversations. Near the back of the room, a small group of beings stood quietly. They looked different from the others. They had pink skin and hair on their heads. Their eyes were small compared to most aliens, and they only had 2 arms each. They wore simple blue uniforms that looked plain next to the advanced armor and robes of the other species. These were humans. They had arrived just 2 days ago in 12 small ships. Their leader, Captain Jake Morrison, was a man in his 40s with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been in space for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this station before. "Sir," whispered Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, standing next to Morrison, "are we really going to get involved in this?" Morrison watched the alien council. "Argue. We're already involved. The distress signals we picked up came from human colonies too. If this swarm keeps moving, they'll reach Earth eventually." The argument in the council grew louder. Some aliens wanted to retreat to the inner worlds and build bigger defenses. Others wanted to attack the swarm before it got stronger. A few suggested running away to another galaxy entirely. Commander Zekdar raised his 4 arms for silence. "Enough. We need ships and warriors, not more talk. Every species in the coalition must contribute to the defense effort." His black eyes turned toward the humans. For a moment, Morrison thought the alien commander might ask for their help. Instead, Zekdar made a sound like laughing, but not in a happy way. "Even the mammals want to help," Zekdar said to his aide, a smaller insect-like being with red markings. "Look at them. They think their primitive ships can fight the swarm." The aide's antennae twitched. "Should we send them away, Commander?" Zekdar studied the humans for a long moment. Morrison met his gaze without backing down. The human captain had faced worse things than angry aliens before. "No," Zekdar decided. "We can use them for evacuation duties. Let them carry refugees while real warriors fight the battle." Morrison felt his jaw tighten, but he didn't say anything. Around him, his officers shifted uncomfortably. They had come here to help fight, not to run errands. The commander turned back to the main display. "The human ships are old and slow. Their weapons are projectile-based, like throwing rocks. They have no energy shields, no psionic abilities, no quantum technology. They are at least 300 years behind our current military standards." A new voice spoke up from the council floor. "Then why are we wasting time with them?" Zekdar's mandibles clicked again. "Because we need every ship we can get, even useless ones. The swarm doesn't care how primitive a ship is when it's evacuating civilians. And if the humans get destroyed doing it, we lose nothing important." The words hit Morrison like a physical blow. He had expected some prejudice from the aliens, but this was worse than he thought. In their eyes, humans were not just weak or backward. They were completely worthless. Rodriguez leaned closer to Morrison. "Captain, maybe we should just go home. We don't need to take this kind of treatment." Morrison shook his head slightly. "No, there are human colonies in the outer systems. Our people are depending on us." The meeting continued for another hour. The coalition forces would make their stand at the Kepler system. It was the last major population center before the swarm reached the inner worlds. If they lost there, billions more would die. Zekdar assigned ships and duties to each species. The proud Centauri would lead the assault with their energy weapons. The mechanical corvettes will provide heavy firepower. The psychic Melody will coordinate communications. Everyone had an important job except the humans. "The mammal ships will handle refugee transport," Zekdar announced. "They will stay far from the battle zone and evacuate civilians to safer systems. This is the only useful thing they can do." Morrison stepped forward. "Commander, with respect, my crews are experienced fighters. We've been in combat before." The alien commander's large eyes fixed on Morrison. "Combat? You mean the small conflicts between your own species? That is not real war, mammal. You have never faced an enemy like the swarm. We'd like the chance to try. Morrison said quietly. Zekthar made that laughing sound again. Your ships carry chemical rockets and metal bullets. The swarm has bio-armor. That can stop energy weapons. What do you think your primitive weapons will do? Morrison felt the eyes of the entire council on him. He could back down now and accept the evacuation duty. It would be safer for his crews. But something inside him refused to give up. Sometimes old ways work when new ways fail, he said. The alien commander's mandibles stopped clicking. For a moment, the room was completely quiet. Then Zekthar began making that not happy laughing sound again, louder this time. Old ways? Your species still uses chemical propulsion to reach space. You have no faster-than-light communication. You cannot even leave your own solar system without artificial gravity. And you think your old ways can defeat an enemy that has destroyed 3 star systems? The other aliens in the council began making their own versions of laughter. Some chirped, others hummed, and a few made sounds like breaking glass. Morrison felt heat rise in his face, but he kept his expression calm. The evacuation duty is yours, Zekthar declared. Do not interfere with the real military operations. Stay out of the way and try not to get your ships destroyed too quickly. The meeting ended with detailed planning for the defense of Kepler. System. The humans were not included in any of the tactical discussions. They were told to report to the evacuation coordinator and await further orders. As the various alien species filed out of the chamber, Morrison and his officers remained behind. The huge room felt empty now, with only the soft hum of the station systems breaking the silence. Well, Rodriguez said finally, that went better than expected. Morrison almost smiled. How do you figure that? They didn't shoot us on sight. Chief Engineer Pete Walsh joined them. He was an older man with callous hands and a reputation for fixing anything that broke. Captain, those alien ships are impressive. But I've been looking at the technical data on the swarm. There might be things we can do that they can't. Such as? Walsh scratched his beard. They're too smart. They think like computers. Everything has to be logical and efficient. But humans, we're messy. We do things that don't make sense. Morrison nodded slowly. Keep thinking about it, Pete. We might get our chance sooner than Commander Zekthar expects. As they walked toward the docking bay where their ships waited, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that the alien commander was making a big mistake. The swarm might be dangerous, but they had never fought humans before. And humans had a long history of winning fights they were supposed to lose. 1 month after landing on Kepler 442c, the human colony had transformed from a desperate survival mission into something that looked like a thriving community. Jake Morrison stood on the observation platform they had built on top of their main shelter, looking out over what was now clearly a permanent settlement. The base had grown far beyond their original plans. What started as 3 simple shelters had become a complex of interconnected buildings. They had workshops, laboratories, living quarters, a dining hall, and even a recreational facility. The construction that should have taken years on Earth had been completed in weeks on this high-gravity world. Below him, Jake could see Joe Martinez working in their agricultural area. Joe was their farming specialist, and he had been experimenting with growing Earth crops in the alien soil. The results had surprised everyone, including Joe himself. Jake, you need to come see this, Joe called up to him. Jake climbed down from the platform, moving with the easy confidence that had become natural for all of them. The ladder that would have been difficult to use a month ago now felt as simple as walking on flat ground. Joe was standing next to rows of vegetables that looked nothing like the crops they had planted. The tomatoes were twice the size of normal Earth tomatoes, but denser and more colorful. The corn stalks were shorter but much thicker, with ears that looked like they could feed a family by themselves. What happened to them? Jake asked. The high gravity, Joe explained excitedly. The plants are adapting just like we are. They're growing denser, stronger, more efficient. These tomatoes have 3 times the nutrition of normal tomatoes. The corn has twice the protein content. Jake picked up one of the tomatoes. It was heavy, much heavier than a normal tomato should be, but it felt solid and perfect in his hand. Can we eat them? I've been testing them for a week, Joe said. They're not only safe, they're better than Earth food. More vitamins, more minerals, more protein. It's like the planet is making everything stronger. Amy Turner jogged over to them, moving at a pace that would have been impossible for any human a month ago. She was carrying a tablet and looked excited about something. Joe, Jake, perfect timing, Amy said, not even breathing hard despite her run. I've been analyzing the planet's ecosystem, and I think I know why everything here is getting stronger. She activated her tablet and showed them a complex diagram. Look at this. The planet's gravity doesn't just affect large objects. It affects everything down to the molecular level. Plants, animals, even microorganisms have to work harder to survive here. So? Jake asked. So evolution doesn't just happen over millions of years, Amy explained. It also happens quickly when organisms face extreme challenges. Everything on this planet, including us, is being forced to become more efficient, stronger, better adapted. Joe nodded in understanding. That's why my crops are so much better than normal. They're not just surviving the high gravity, they're using it to become superior plants. Jake thought about this. It made sense that the same forces making humans stronger would affect other living things the same way. What about the native life forms? Have you found any? That's the interesting part, Amy said. There aren't any large native life forms, just plants and microorganisms. I think the gravity is too strong for most animal life to evolve here naturally. But humans can handle it, Jake said. Humans can handle anything, said a voice behind them. They turned to see Kate Rogers approaching. Kate was their fitness coordinator, and she had been working with the crew to help them adapt to their new environment. She looked stronger and more energetic than Jake had ever seen her. I've been running some tests, Kate said. Want to see something amazing? She led them to the recreational area where she had set up various exercise equipment. Remember how hard it was to do simple exercises when we first arrived? Watch this. Kate walked over to a set of weights that would have been considered heavy even on Earth. She picked them up and began doing exercises that should have been impossible in triple gravity. She moved smoothly and easily, like the weights were made of foam. That's incredible, Joe said. How much weight is that? About what I used to lift on Earth, Kate said. But here, it's 3 times heavier, which means I'm 3 times stronger than I was a month ago. Amy was already running calculations on her tablet. If humans continue adapting at this rate, we'll be stronger and healthier than any human in history within a few months. What about our friends up there? Jake asked, pointing to the sky where they all knew alien observer ships were watching them dot. As if summoned by his question, their communication system began beeping. Nick Stevens ran over from the workshop where he had been building improvements. To their equipment, it's Veltar again, Nick announced. The Zephyrian observer wants to talk to us. Jake activated the communication system. Veltar's image appeared on their screen, but the alien looked different than before. Its normally bright coloring seemed faded, and its movements were slow and tired. Humans, Veltar said through the translator. I have been observing your colony for 1 month. I must ask you some questions. Of course, Jake said. What do you want to know? Are you enjoying yourselves? Veltar asked, as if the concept was difficult to understand. Jake looked around at his crew. Kate was still lifting weights that should have been impossible. Joe was tending crops that were better than anything grown on Earth. Amy was analyzing data that showed continuous improvement in everything they studied. Everyone looked healthy, happy, and more energetic than they had been in years. Yes, Jake said simply. We're enjoying ourselves very much. But this is a death world, Veltar sighed. High-gravity worlds are supposed to be places of suffering and failure. How can you be enjoying a death world? Maybe it's only a death world for some species, Lisa said, joining the conversation. For humans, it seems to be a life world. Veltar was quiet for a long moment. I have sent reports to the Galactic Council. They do not believe my observations. They think I'm making errors in my data collection. What kind of observations? Jake asked. I have recorded humans lifting objects that should crush them. I have seen humans running distances that should exhaust them. I have watched humans work for hours without rest in conditions that would kill most beings in minutes. Pete Johnson walked over, carrying a piece of equipment that weighed several hundred pounds. He set it down gently and joined the conversation, not even breathing. Hard from the effort. I have observed humans playing games in triple gravity, Veltar continued. Games for fun. In conditions that my own species considers lethal. Jake realized that Veltar was right. Just yesterday, several crew members had organized a game of soccer using a ball they had made from local materials. They had run around for hours, laughing and competing, treating the crushing gravity like it was nothing more than an interesting challenge. We also observed that human crops grow better here than they do on your home world, Veltar said. Your food production is more efficient in deadly conditions than it is in safe conditions. This makes no sense. It makes perfect sense if you understand humans, Amy said. We don't just adapt to difficult conditions. We thrive in them. The harder the challenge, the stronger we become. Your colony's population has also increased, Veltar said. How is this possible? Jake smiled. 3 new crew members had arrived from Earth the previous week, drawn by the reports of their success. They had adapted to the high gravity even faster than the original colonists, as if the techniques for adaptation were getting better with practice. Word is spreading, Jake explained. More humans want to come here. They want to see what we've built and be part of it. But why? Veltar asked. Why do humans seek out dangerous places? Why do you go to worlds that other species avoid? Jake thought about the question. It was a good one, and it got to the heart of what made humans different from other species. Because that's where the best opportunities are, Jake said finally. Other species see this world and think about all the ways it could kill them. Humans see this world and think about all the ways it could make them stronger. Veltar's image flickered as the alien processed this information. The Galactic Council wants to send a scientific expedition to study your colony. They want to understand how this is possible. They're welcome to come, Jake said. But they should be prepared to be surprised. They are already surprised, Veltar said. Your success here has challenged everything we thought we knew about high-gravity colonization. Some council members are now wondering what other impossible worlds humans might be able to colonize. Jake looked around at his thriving colony, at his healthy and happy crew, at the amazing crops and the impressive buildings they had constructed in just 1 month. Tell the council we'd be happy to help. Then find out, he said.